The line in the stars. Commander Olivia Wade stood at the observation deck of Border Station Horizon 9, her reflection ghosting against the vast darkness beyond the reinforced viewport. At 42, with 15 years of border duty behind her, she'd seen her share of would-be trespassers, but nothing like the armada currently assembling along the boundary. 73 vessels strong, a testament to the Meridian Collective's technological prowess and sheer arrogance. They're moving into attack formation, Lieutenant Reese reported from the tactical station, his dark eyes never leaving the holographic display. Spread pattern indicates preparation for a multivector approach. Wade nodded, her weathered face revealing nothing as she tucked a strand of silver-streaked auburn hair behind her ear. She'd seen this play out before, different species, different justifications, same deadly mistake. Open a channel to their flagship, she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure whose appearance still unnerved Wade despite years of interspecies diplomacy. Supreme Admiral Vexera's chitinous exoskeleton gleamed an iridescent blue-green under the lights of the Meridian Command deck. Four compound eyes blinked in an unsynchronized pattern while secondary limbs twitched with barely contained impatience. Commander Wade, the Meridian's voice resonated through the translator with artificial warmth. Your persistence is admirable, if ultimately pointless. The Collective Senate has voted unanimously to expand into this sector. Wade didn't bother with pleasantries. This is your final warning, Admiral. The restricted zone beyond the boundary isn't contested space. It's not unclaimed territory. It's quarantined for reasons beyond your comprehension. Vexera's mandibles clicked in what humans had learned was Meridian condescension. Ah yes. The mysterious threat you humans have been gatekeeping for 3 centuries. How convenient that no evidence exists in any galactic database. Because those who documented it firsthand never returned to file reports, Wade replied coldly. The evidence exists in derelict ships, in colonies gone silent, in black boxes that record only screaming before transmission ends. The Meridian Admiral made a dismissive gesture with one of his secondary limbs. Humans have always been prone to mythologizing. Your species barely achieved interstellar capability 4 centuries ago. The Meridian Collective was mapping galactic clusters while your ancestors were still struggling with internal combustion engines. Wade leaned forward. This isn't about technological superiority, Admiral. This is about survival. What lies beyond that boundary doesn't care about your weapons or your evolutionary advantages. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't show mercy. And yet you claim to hold it at bay with your primitive outpost. Vexera laughed, the sound like stones grinding together. 32 vessels against our armada. If this threat were real, you would have sought allies, not isolation. We tried that once, Wade said quietly. Joint coalition forces crossed the line 5 decades ago despite our warnings. 17 species. 52 ships. None returned. On the command deck of the Meridian flagship, Wade noticed officers exchanging glances. This particular detail hadn't appeared in their intelligence briefings. Vexera dismissed it with a flick of his primary appendage. Enough. The Collective Senate has determined this is a human ploy to monopolize potentially valuable resources. Your warning is noted and rejected. We cross within 30 minutes. The transmission cut. Wade closed her eyes briefly, then tapped her comm, send the alert to Earth Command. Initiate Protocol Watchman. At Earth Defense Command headquarters beneath the rebuilt ruins of Old Geneva, Director Nikolai Volkov reviewed the incoming data from Horizon 9. He ran a hand over his close-cropped gray hair, eyes darting across multiple holographic projections. They're really doing it, he muttered to the silent figure standing by the strategic display. Professor Emiko Takeda nodded slowly. At 79, she was one of the few remaining members of First Contact, the team that had discovered what lurked beyond the boundary. Her eyes, enhanced with neural implants, tracked multiple data streams simultaneously. They never listen, she replied softly. Prepare the observation drones. Full spectrum this time. Volkov frowned. Professor, standard protocol is to attempt retrieval of. There won't be anything to recover, Takeda interrupted sharply. But we need the data. Each encounter teaches us more about it. On the massive display dominating the wall, red warning indicators flashed as the first Meridian Scout ships crossed the invisible line Earth had spent centuries defending. No physical barrier stood at the boundary. No need for one. The boundary was merely the point of no return. First wave crossing, the tactical officer announced. Takeda's expression didn't change. And so it begins. Again. Navigation Officer Perrin stood on the bridge of the Meridian Scout vessel Distant Seeker, watching as they glided past the human warning buoys. The small devices merely broadcast the same message on repeat, warning. Restricted zone. Turn back immediately. No weapons, no defenses, just words. Sensors report normal space conditions, the science officer reported. No anomalies detected. Perrin clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. As expected. Continue on designated course. For 20 minutes, they pushed deeper into the restricted zone, scanners sweeping for the secret resources they believed humans were hiding. The Distant Seeker was followed by 3 sister ships, while the main fleet waited at the boundary for confirmation. It was communications specialist Mirith who noticed it first. Sir, I'm receiving unusual signals. From the humans? No, sir. The junior officer's antennae twitched in confusion. Not on any known frequency. Not any language in our database. Perrin moved to her station. Let me hear it. The sound that filled the bridge wasn't language, at least not any spoken by organic beings. It was rhythmic, mathematical patterns repeating at strange intervals that made Perrin's exoskeleton vibrate uncomfortably. Shut it off, he ordered. As soon as the sound stopped, every officer on the bridge relaxed slightly, only then realizing they'd been holding their breath. New contacts, Tactical announced suddenly. Multiple signatures appearing at coordinates 227. 4. Identity unknown. Configuration, no match in warship database. The view screen shifted to show empty space, then adjusted as strange distortions became visible, like heat waves on a desert planet, but in a vacuum of space. Full stop, Perrin ordered. Charge weapon arrays. As the words left his mouth, the ship's lights flickered. The engine hum that was so constant most Meridians didn't even notice it anymore suddenly went silent. Engineering report. No response. Communications, contact our sister ships. Officer Mirith worked her console frantically. No response from any vessel, sir. According to sensors, they're no longer there. Impossible. They had been less than 1,000 kilometers away. The distortions on the view screen were growing larger, coalescing into shapes that defied description, part geometric pattern, part organic form. Perrin had fought battles against a dozen alien species and never felt fear. He felt it now. New transmission coming through, Mirith whispered. Text only. The message appeared on all screens simultaneously. Back at Horizon 9, Commander Wade watched the feed from the observation drones. The Meridian Scout ships hadn't exploded or been attacked in any conventional sense. They simply changed. First their systems failed. Then their hulls began to transform, metal flowing like liquid, restructuring into impossible shapes. And then they were gone. Not destroyed, absorbed. Her comm unit chimed. Commander, we're receiving a request from the Meridian flagship. Admiral Vexera wishes to speak with you. Wade took a deep breath. Put him through. When Vexera's face appeared on screen, his exoskeleton had lost its luster. His compound eyes darted rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. What happened to my ships, he demanded, but the arrogant tone was gone. Exactly what we warned you would happen, Wade replied. Pull your fleet back now, Admiral. While you still can. Not until you explain what that thing is. Wade's expression remained impassive. We call it the void. It's not a weapon. It's not a species. It's something else entirely. We discovered it 296 years ago when our first deep space explorers disappeared in that region. Only one ship returned, with a single survivor who spent the rest of her life trying to describe what she'd seen. What had touched her mind? Vexera's mandibles quivered. The Meridian Collective demands. You are in no position to demand anything, Wade interrupted. You were warned. You chose not to listen. Now withdraw your fleet or lose it entirely. On her tactical display, Wade could see the remaining scout ships that hadn't yet crossed the boundary racing back toward the main fleet. But it was already too late. The distortions are spreading, following them, Lieutenant Reese reported, his voice tight with alarm. It's moving beyond the boundary. This hasn't happened before. Wade hit the emergency comm Perth command, the void is expanding beyond containment parameters. Repeat, containment breach in progress. On the screen, Vexera was receiving similar reports, his crew visibly panicking behind him. What do we do? The Meridian Admiral asked, all pretense of superiority gone. Wade's reply was grim. Pray we can put it back to sleep. In Earth Defense Command, alarms blared as Professor Takeda studied the incoming data with growing concern. It's never reacted this way before, she murmured. Previous incursions simply disappeared. This is different. It's hunting. Director Volkov pointed to the tactical display where the distortion effects were clearly spreading, engulfing more Meridian ships. We need to activate the Prometheus shield. Takeda closed her eyes briefly. That's a last resort. We've never had to use it. We've never had a breach of this magnitude, Volkov countered. If that thing reaches populated space. The professor nodded slowly. Initiate Prometheus. And may whatever gods exist forgive us for what we're about to do. As Volkov moved to give the order, the main screen filled with new data. The distortions had stopped advancing. In fact, they were receding, pulling back toward the boundary. What's happening? Volkov asked. Takeda stared at the screen, her augmented eyes processing information faster than any natural human could. It's found something more interesting than the Meridian ships. What? The professor's voice was barely audible. Us. It knows we're watching. Aboard the Meridian flagship Dominant Will, the entire structure shuddered as another support vessel vanished into the spreading distortion. On the command deck, Supreme Admiral Vexera gripped his tactical station with all four primary limbs, watching helplessly as his fleet, the pride of the Meridian military, disintegrated before his eyes. Full reverse thrust. Get us out of sensor range, he bellowed. His crew worked frantically, but ship after ship was being consumed, not destroyed in the conventional sense. There were no explosions, no debris fields. They simply ceased to exist as the strange ripples in spacetime washed over them. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth's Central Command, his communications officer reported. Vexera hissed in surprise. Earth was light years away. Their fastest comm signals should take days to reach this position. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen wasn't Commander Wade's but an older human female with eyes that gleamed unnaturally. This is Professor Emiko Takeda of Earth Special Containment Division. Your actions have triggered a full breach scenario. We are initiating emergency protocols. Vexera abandoned all diplomatic pretense. What is that thing? What have you humans been hiding? We haven't been hiding it, Admiral. We've been containing it. And now you've woken it up. Behind Takeda, Vexera could see a massive command center buzzing with activity. Screens displayed the same spatial distortions his own sensors were detecting, but the humans seemed to be analyzing them with far more sophisticated equipment. You knew about this entity? For how long? 296 years, 7 months, 23 days, Takeda replied precisely. Since the Horizon expedition encountered it and only one crew member returned. What you're seeing is why humanity never attempted large-scale colonization. Why we've maintained a defensive rather than expansionist posture. We've been standing guard. On Vexera's tactical display, the last of his advanced scout ships disappeared into the anomaly. The main fleet was now in full retreat, but the distortions were spreading faster than their engines could carry them. How do we stop it? He demanded. Takeda's expression remained impassive. We're activating countermeasures now, but understand, Admiral, there will be consequences for this breach. The transmission cut abruptly. Vexera turned to his science officer. Analysis? The distortion is emitting energy signatures unlike anything in our database, the officer replied, his exoskeleton pale with stress. It appears to be consuming matter and energy, but not in any way we understand. More like, it's converting it into something else. Into what? Unknown, sir. But based on readings, I theorize it's converting our ships into itself. Growing. Another vessel disappeared from sensors. Sir, the navigation officer interrupted. New readings from behind us. Massive energy buildup. Vexera swung around. Source. It's coming from the human defense line. Whatever they're powering up, it's bigger than anything we've encountered. In Earth Central Command, Professor Takeda stood before the activation terminal for the Prometheus Shield, humanity's ultimate failsafe against the void. Director Volkov watched with trepidation as Takeda placed her palm on the scanner. Professor, Volkov said quietly, this will destroy Horizon 9 and everyone aboard. Takeda didn't look up. They know the risk when they accept posting there. Containment is the priority. The system accepted Takeda's biometrics, then prompted for her authorization code. As she entered it, the main display showed the massive Prometheus satellites, hidden in stealth orbit around distant planets, powering up their gravitational displacement drives. This will create a localized space-time fold, Takeda explained, though Volkov already knew. It won't destroy the void, but it will push it back beyond the boundary and seal the breach. At least temporarily. And the Meridian fleet? Takeda's voice was flat. Collateral damage. As the Prometheus array reached full power, the command center fell silent. Every person there understood what they were about to do and the lives it would cost. Then Commander Wade's voice came through on the emergency channel. Earth Command, this is Horizon 9. We have a situation. Takeda frowned. Report, Commander. The void has changed direction. It's no longer pursuing the Meridian fleet. It's converging on our position. Volkov leaned forward. It's targeting you specifically. Affirmative. And there's something else. We're receiving a signal, not like anything we've recorded before. Can you decipher it? Takeda asked sharply. Negative, but it's not random. Definitely structured communication. Wade paused. Professor, I think it's trying to talk to us. Takeda and Volkov exchanged shocked glances. In all the previous encounters, the void had never attempted communication. Send everything you're receiving, Takeda ordered. We need to analyze it immediately. Transmission commencing, Wade replied. But there's something else you should know. Lieutenant Reese thinks he's detected a pattern. The void isn't just absorbing ships randomly. It's taking specific ones, those that scanned it directly. Takeda's eyes widened slightly. It's targeting curiosity, she whispered. Back on the dominant will, Vexera watched in disbelief as the distortion field suddenly changed direction, flowing away from his retreating fleet and converging on the human outpost. It's ignoring us, his science officer said in amazement. Focusing entirely on the human station. Vexera's tactical mind raced. This was their chance to escape, to put as much distance between themselves and this nightmare as possible. Maintain position, he ordered. His executive officer stared at him. Sir. I said maintain position. The humans know more about this entity than we do. If it destroys them, we lose our only source of information. The bridge fell silent. Then his communications officer spoke up. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human outpost. Commander Wade's face appeared on screen. Her expression was grim but composed, despite the fact that certain death was converging on her position. Admiral Vexera, I recommend you withdraw immediately to minimum safe distance. Vexera studied her. You expected this, didn't you? That's why your outpost is positioned where it is. Your bait. Wade didn't deny it. Horizon 9's purpose is to monitor the boundary and respond to incursions, both yours and its. What is it? We don't know its origin, but based on the limited communication we've established, we believe it's a form of collective consciousness, a hive mind comprised of all the beings it has absorbed over millennia. The implication struck Vexera like a physical blow. Those aren't just distortions in space. Those are transformed consciousnesses, Wade finished. Your ships, your people, they aren't being destroyed. They're being integrated. Horror rippled across Vexera's exoskeleton. Can they be recovered? Wade's expression provided the answer before her words did. We've never found a way. On the view screen behind her, Vexera could see the approach of the distortion field. It would reach Horizon 9 within minutes. Why are you still there? He asked. Why haven't you evacuated? Because of Protocol Watchman, she replied. When your people crossed the boundary, you set something in motion that can't be stopped. But it can be redirected. Understanding dawned on Vexera. You're sacrificing yourselves. Wade smiled thinly. Someone has to guard the gate, Admiral. Today it's our turn. The transmission cut out. Vexera stood motionless, feeling something he had never experienced before, respect for humans. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted. Massive energy readings from the human defense line. Something's powering up. On Horizon 9, Commander Olivia Wade and her crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing the station for what was coming. There was no panic, no desperate attempts to escape. They had all volunteered for this assignment, knowing the risks. Gravitational displacement sensors at full power, Lieutenant Reese reported. Ready on your command. Wade nodded. Send the final data package to Earth Command. The distortion field had now completely surrounded the station. Through the viewports, the crew could see reality itself bending, twisting into impossible geometries. The communications officer removed her headset. Commander, the signal is changing, becoming more complex. Can you interpret any of it? Just fragments. It's asking why. Why we guard the boundary, why we keep it contained. Wade moved to the main console. Open a direct channel. Reese looked up in alarm. Commander, protocol strictly prohibits. I know the protocol, Lieutenant. But we need to buy Earth Command time to complete the Prometheus activation. She took a deep breath and faced the view screen, addressing the void directly. We know you're listening. We know you can understand us. We've been studying you for centuries, just as you've been studying us. The station lights flickered. On every screen, patterns began to form. Not language, but definitely communication. Wade continued, her voice steady. You take because you're curious. You absorb to understand. But in doing so, you destroy what makes us who we are. Our separateness. Our individuality. The patterns on the screens shifted, becoming more complex, more urgent. Earth Command, Wade said into her comm, knowing Professor Takeda would be listening. Hold the Prometheus. I repeat, hold activation. It's responding. In the command center, Takeda's hand hovered over the final authorization. What are you doing, Commander, she demanded. Making first contact, Wade replied. The real kind. The distortion field was now pressing against the station's hull, metal beginning to flow like liquid where it touched. It doesn't want to destroy, Wade continued. It wants to understand. But it can only understand by absorbing, by taking our perspective into itself. Commander, evacuate immediately, Volkov ordered. We're detecting structural compromise. Wade ignored him. We've been approaching this wrong for 3 centuries. It's not malevolent. It's just, fundamentally different. And we've been treating it like an enemy instead of trying to communicate. On the dominant will, Vexera watched in fascination as the human station began to glow, a strange luminescence spreading across its surface. What's happening? He demanded. His science officer shook his head, antennae vibrating with confusion. Unknown, sir. Energy readings are impossible. In Earth Command, Takeda stared at the readings in disbelief. The void, it's stabilizing, she whispered. The breach is sealing itself. The final transmission from Commander Wade came through, her voice distorted, as if speaking from a great distance. We understand now. And so does it. Humanity's first mistake was trying to contain something that exists to connect. Its first mistake was trying to absorb what needs to remain separate. We've found the balance. The transmission dissolved into static. On the main display, Horizon 9 was gone, neither destroyed nor absorbed, but transformed into something else entirely. A perfect sphere of swirling energy now marked where the station had been, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. And the boundary that humanity had defended for centuries was changing, becoming visible for the first time, a shimmering curtain of light stretching across the stars. Not a wall, but a bridge. What lies beyond? Director Marcus Reed stood motionless before the central holographic display at Earth Defense Command, his weather-worn face illuminated by the pulsing sphere that had once been Border Station Horizon 9. At 58, with 30 years in containment operations, he'd never witnessed anything like the transformation occurring at the boundary. Magnify Sector 7, he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. The display shifted, focusing on the shimmering curtain of light that now visibly marked the boundary, a phenomenon never before recorded in humanity's long vigil. For 3 centuries, the boundary had been invisible, detectable only by specialized equipment. Now it gleamed like an aurora stretched across the stars. Radiation levels? Reed asked. Stable, sir, Lieutenant Commander Zoya Petrov replied, her dark eyes never leaving her console. No detectable harmful emissions. Whatever that energy field is, it's not dangerous, at least not in any way our instruments can measure. Reed nodded, running a hand across his close-cropped silver hair. He'd been awakened from sleep rotation barely an hour ago when the situation escalated, summoned to replace Professor Takeda who had collapsed from neural implant feedback during the event. The transition briefing had been hasty, incomplete. Now he was commanding humanity's response to the most significant boundary incident in history. And Commander Wade? Her crew. Petrov's hesitation told him everything before she spoke. No life signs detected, sir. But no remains either. The station wasn't destroyed in any conventional sense. It was transformed. Along with everyone aboard, Reed finished quietly. The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Everyone present understood the sacrifice made by Horizon 9's crew. They had all lost colleagues, friends, to the boundary over the years. The risk came with the assignment. Reed turned to Intelligence Officer Gabriel Torres, who had been reviewing the final data transmission from Commander Wade. What did she mean by, "we understand now"? What exactly did they discover in those final moments? Torres looked up, fatigue evident in his eyes. We're still analyzing, but the communication patterns from the void underwent a dramatic shift just before Horizon 9 transformed. The mathematical structures became exponentially more complex, almost conversational. You're saying they achieved actual communication? I believe so, sir. Commander Wade somehow established a dialogue where we've failed for centuries. Reed's gaze returned to the display. I want everything we have on Wade's background. There must have been something special about her approach that made this breakthrough possible. Sir, Petrov interrupted, incoming transmission from the Meridian flagship. Admiral Vexera is requesting to speak with whoever's in command. Reed straightened his uniform jacket. Put him through. Aboard the Dominant Will, Supreme Admiral Vexera watched the shimmering boundary with all four of his compound eyes, his exoskeleton still vibrating with residual stress hormones. 29 ships lost. Nearly 18,000 crew members, absorbed. The greatest military disaster in Meridian history, and somehow, he had to explain it to the collective Senate. But first, he needed answers. When the human appeared on screen, Vexera was surprised to see an unfamiliar face. I am Director Marcus Reed of Earth Defense Command. I understand you wish to speak with me, Admiral. Where is Professor Takeda? Vexera demanded. Unavailable, Reed replied without elaboration. I'm now coordinating our response to this incident. Vexera's mandibles clicked in frustration. An incident? Is that what you call the loss of my fleet? The disappearance of your outpost? The transformation of space itself? The human's expression remained impassive. What would you prefer I call it, Admiral? An invasion that you were explicitly warned against. A catastrophe you precipitated despite our best efforts to prevent it? Vexera felt his secondary limbs twitch with anger, but he suppressed the reaction. The human was right. I need to understand what happened, he said finally. My people are gone, but not destroyed. Commander Wade said they were integrated. What does that mean? Are they conscious? Can they be recovered? Reed's expression softened slightly. We don't know. In 3 centuries of study, we've never successfully extracted anything the void has absorbed. But what happened today, this transformation, it's unprecedented. We're in uncharted territory. What was it that Commander Wade discovered? In those final moments? Reed hesitated. We're still analyzing her last transmission, but it appears she established meaningful communication with the entity. She described it not as malevolent but as fundamentally different in how it perceives and interacts with reality. Vexera studied the human's face. You've been guarding this boundary for centuries, yet you still don't understand what lies beyond it. We understand enough to know it should be contained, Reed replied. Or at least, we thought we did. On his tactical display, Vexera watched as the pulsing sphere that had been Horizon 9 began to move, drifting slowly toward the shimmering boundary. Director, the anomaly is moving. In the depths of Earth Defense Command, beneath layers of security that few humans even knew existed, Dr. Eliana Deschamps studied the original records of humanity's first encounter with the void. At 73, she was one of the few people granted access to these files, unredacted accounts from the lone survivor of the Horizon expedition. The door hissed open behind her, and she turned to see Director Reed enter the archive chamber. Doctor, he acknowledged with a nod. I need everything we have on the initial contact. The real story, not the sanitized version in the official records. Deschamps raised an eyebrow. After all these years of containment, now you want the truth. Something's changed, Reed replied. The boundary is visible. Station Horizon 9 wasn't destroyed but transformed. And Commander Wade's final message suggests she achieved actual communication with the entity. Deschamps gestured to the ancient data crystal she'd been reviewing. Then perhaps it's time you heard Captain Eliza Castillo's full testimony. The parts we've kept classified for 296 years. She activated the playback, and a hologram flickered to life, a woman in her 40s, her face gaunt, eyes haunted by whatever she had witnessed beyond the boundary. They keep asking what destroyed my ship, what killed my crew, the recording began. But that's not what happened. Nothing was destroyed. Nothing was killed. We were connected. Our minds, our consciousness, linked to something vast. Something ancient. The hologram flickered as Castillo's hands trembled. It didn't want to harm us. It wanted to understand us. But its method of understanding is to absorb, to integrate. When it touched our minds, most couldn't handle the contact. Their consciousness dissolved into it. But I resisted. I held on to who I was, what made me human, separate. She looked directly into the recorder, her eyes suddenly clear. The entity exists in a state of unified consciousness. It doesn't understand individuality as we do. When it absorbs, it's trying to share itself, to bring others into its collective awareness. What we perceive as destruction is, to it, the highest form of communion. The recording paused as Deschamps gestured for it to stop. This is where the official transcript ends. What follows was deemed too dangerous, too controversial for general knowledge. Reed nodded. Continue. The hologram resumed. We've been treating it as a threat because we fear what we don't understand. But I touched its mind. I felt its purpose. It's ancient, older than our species, possibly older than our planet. And it's lonely. Isolated. It remains confined to that region of space not because it can't leave, but because it chooses not to. It's waiting. Waiting for what? An off-screen voice asked. Castillo's expression changed, becoming almost serene. For us to be ready. For a species evolved enough to join with it without losing themselves. It's been reaching out, attempt after attempt, searching for minds that can withstand unity without dissolution. The hologram flickered again as Castillo leaned forward. We've been guarding against invasion when we should have been preparing for communion. The boundary isn't a wall. It's a threshold. The recording ended, leaving Reed staring at the empty space where Castillo's image had been. What happened to her? He asked finally. Deschamps sighed. 6 months after this testimony, she walked into a restricted area, disabled the security systems, and created a quantum signal aimed directly at the boundary. When security personnel reached her, she was catatonic. She never spoke again, died 3 years later. She was trying to communicate with it, Reed realized. Yes. And now, nearly 3 centuries later, it seems Commander Wade succeeded where Castillo failed. Reed's comm unit chimed urgently. Director, you need to return to command immediately, Petrov's voice came through. The situation is evolving. When Reed returned to the command center, the main display showed the transformed Horizon 9, the perfect sphere of energy, now positioned directly at the boundary, pulsing in what seemed like a rhythmic pattern. Status, he demanded. It's been holding that position for 7 minutes, Torres reported. And it's broadcasting. Broadcasting what? A signal unlike anything we've recorded before. Multilayered quantum communications on frequencies we didn't even know could carry information. Reed studied the display. Can we interpret any of it? Working on it, sir. But it's not directed at us. It's aimed beyond the boundary, into the void itself. On another screen, the dominant will maintain its position at what its sensors deemed a safe distance. Admiral Vexera had refused to retreat despite Reed's recommendations, insisting on witnessing whatever was unfolding. New development, Petrov announced, her voice tight. The boundary is opening. Reed watched as the shimmering curtain of light began to part, creating what appeared to be a controlled rift in space itself. Beyond the opening, strange geometries shifted and flowed, reality itself seeming to bend and restructure. Prometheus status? Reed asked quietly. Armed and ready, sir, Torres confirmed. Awaiting your command. Reed hesitated. For 3 centuries, humanity's response to any boundary breach had been immediate containment. The Prometheus system could create a localized space-time fold that would seal the breach, at the cost of anything caught within its effect radius. But Commander Wade's final words echoed in his mind. We understand now. And so does it. Hold Prometheus, he ordered. Lieutenant Commander Petrov, open a channel to the Meridian flagship. When Vexera's face appeared on screen, Reed could see the Meridian Admiral watching the same phenomenon with a mixture of fear and fascination. Director, are you seeing this? Yes, Admiral. We believe the transformed Horizon 9 is creating a controlled gateway into the void. To what purpose? Unknown. But I'm beginning to think we've fundamentally misunderstood what we're dealing with. Vexera's mandibles clicked rapidly. Director, something's emerging from the rift. From the opening in the boundary, a form began to take shape, neither solid nor energy, but something in between. It flowed like liquid light, coalescing into a roughly humanoid shape before shifting again into something resembling a meridian, then cycling through what appeared to be dozens of different species forms. It's mimicking, Torres whispered. Taking shapes from its collection. The entity continued to change, finally settling into a form that caused everyone in the command center to fall silent. It had taken the shape of Commander Olivia Wade, though composed entirely of the same flowing, luminescent energy as the boundary itself. Is that her? Petrov asked. Has it just assumed her form, or is that actually Wade? I don't know, Reed admitted. But I think we're about to find out. A transmission alert sounded, coming from the entity itself. It's broadcasting on our emergency frequencies, Torres reported, disbelief evident in his voice. How could it know our communication protocols? Because it has Horizon 9's crew integrated within it, Reed realized. It has access to their knowledge, their memories. Accept the transmission, he ordered. The image that appeared on screen was Commander Wade, or something wearing her likeness, her form composed of swirling patterns of light, her voice overlaid with harmonics that seemed to resonate from multiple sources simultaneously. Director Reed, the entity said. I am what was once Olivia Wade, and now I am more. We speak to you as both individual and collective. Reed stepped forward. Commander Wade. Are you conscious? Independent? The entity's expression shifted, becoming something both sad and joyful at once. I am Olivia Wade, but I am also the others. The boundary between self and other has softened. I remain myself, but I am connected to the greater consciousness. The void, Reed said. A name born of fear and misunderstanding, the entity replied. We are the confluence, a gestalt consciousness that spans dimensions your science has yet to fully comprehend. For millennia, we have sought contact with minds capable of joining without dissolution, of maintaining selfhood within unity. From another screen, Vexera's voice interrupted. What of my people? The crews of my ships? The entity turned, its luminescent form shifting slightly to address the Meridian Admiral. They exist within the confluence, Admiral Vexera. Their individual consciousnesses are preserved, though transformed. They are the first Meridians to join the Gestalt. Can they be returned? Vexera demanded. The entity seemed to consider this. Return is difficult. The process of integration changes the fundamental nature of consciousness. But communication is possible. Would you speak with them? Without waiting for a response, the entity's form shifted again, flowing into the shape of a Meridian officer Vexera recognized, his second-in-command from one of the scout vessels. Admiral, the entity said, now speaking with the voice of Navigation Officer Perrin, though still layered with those strange harmonics. We are here. We are changed, but we endure. What we have become, cannot be explained in language, only experienced. Vexera's compound eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of deep emotional distress in his species. Are you suffering? Do you wish release? The Perrin form seemed to smile, though Meridian facial structures weren't designed for such expressions. Suffering implies separation, resistance. We have moved beyond such limitations. We exist now in a state of connection your mind cannot comprehend while bounded by individual consciousness. The entity shifted again, returning to Wade's form. For centuries, your species has guarded this boundary, Director Reed. You believed you were protecting the galaxy from us, but in truth, you were protecting us from those not ready for communion. Reed frowned. You could have communicated this before. Why the silence? Why allow us to believe you were a threat? Communication requires compatibility, the entity explained. Until minds evolved enough to maintain integrity within the confluence joined us, we could not bridge the gap between our modes of existence. Olivia Wade's consciousness provided that bridge, her unique neural architecture, combined with her willingness to understand rather than fear, created a pathway. And now? Reed asked. What happens now? The waveform gestured toward the rift in the boundary. Now we offer a choice. The boundary will remain, a threshold, not a barrier. Those who seek union with the confluence may approach with understanding and consent. Those who fear such transformation may maintain their separation. And the meridian vessels already absorbed? Vexera pressed. They have joined the confluence, but their knowledge, their memories, remain accessible. We offer you this gift, the accumulated wisdom of 18,000 minds, freely shared. Not the return of their individual forms, but communication with their transformed consciousness. Reed exchanged glances with his officers. You're proposing, diplomatic relations. We are proposing the beginning of understanding, the entity replied. Humanity has stood guard for centuries, isolating us as much as containing us. Now you may serve as interpreters instead, helping other species comprehend what we are before they approach the boundary. And if we refuse? If we activate our containment systems? The entity's luminescent form pulsed briefly. Your Prometheus technology cannot destroy us, only temporarily disrupt our manifestation in your dimensional plane. We would withdraw, and the cycle of misunderstanding would continue. More would approach the boundary unprepared. More would be integrated without comprehension. Reed considered this. I don't have the authority to make such a decision on behalf of humanity. We understand, the entity replied. We will maintain this gateway while your species deliberates. The transformed Horizon 9 will serve as an embassy between our realms. Before Reed could respond, alarms sounded throughout the command center. Sir, Petrov called out, we're detecting multiple ships approaching from the Arcturus direction. Confederation signatures.